Trapped by the belief that I'm not good enough, bound by the limitations and the lies that consumed my world, this was me. It wasn't until I took the biggest leap in my life to know and trust the power within. And it was at that moment I made a choice. My past will not define me anymore. Hello, I am Teri, and I know I am not alone in this. Over the years, I have found that the number one mistake that we make is that we get in the way of our own success story. Yes, I said it. On this show, together we'll tackle limiting beliefs, self sabotage, getting stuck, fear, doubt, overwhelm, and the imposter syndrome. Join us on this journey designed to transport you beyond your limitations to a world where anything is possible. This is Talking with Teri.
Welcome back to Talking with Teri, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and your business. And I am so delighted. I was in Dallas not too long ago, and I had the honor and privilege to meet Maymi with us. And he's here with us today. He is a radio talk show host on the 570 AM KLIF Dallas. He's a CEO, entrepreneur Maverick, which I just absolutely love, noted 10-time author, speaker, sales psychology, and persuasion selling expert. I mean, that's a mouthful. Welcome to the show, Jay.
Hey, thanks for having me, Teri. Appreciate you, and I appreciate you being a guest on my show a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, I'm excited. So one of the things that I love asking people is because you've been successful, you've grown, you've been on this journey and you've come to be where you're at today. And we often find like we forget that we started somewhere else, right? And so I want you to share with us a little bit about your story, your journey, and what have you had to overcome to get to where you're at today?
Well, I tell you, one of the things that I had to overcome really started early on, and it's one of those challenges that followed me a long life until I had to put a stop to it. And we'll get to that in a minute. But I'm a product of meager means. I have a twin brother, and we were both adopted 4 days after birth. My original birth mom was a crackhead, and my father was a guy. My natural father was someone that did the deed and ran, right?
Yeah.
And so we grew up in Spanish Harlem. We were adopted by Puerto Rican parents in the late 60s, which Spanish Harlem in the late 60s with the gangs, it just was a good place. And so we grew up in that environment, which was very poverty driven. So I learned early on by 13 years old that if I were going to break free from the muck and mire of my environment, that I had to do something different. I knew that I was gifted to do something different. I had an entrepreneurial spirit already at 13 years old. I was collecting bottles and cans from Century Park, which was up the block from where we lived, in order to convert those bottles and cans into a nickel. And that was my entrepreneurial awakening at 13 years old. But you still, when you're in that environment, it's easy to make bad decisions, head down a wrong path. When there's lack and meagerness, you could certainly find ways to supplement whatever you're missing financially by making a bad decision and getting involved with the wrong people. There was no shortage of that. So part of the what I've learned to do, and even till today, is really learning how to cocoon myself from the negativity that's abundantly available every day.
Agreed.
There's no shortage of that. So I had to do that 13 years old, right through high school and college, and then in the business world. And obviously when you get older and you meet all sorts of different people, and that negativity is never too far off. So that's been the challenge that I've had to overcome, and I've gotten very good at it.
And I think there's a lot of folks in your shoes, and I would say I was in your shoes too, in the sense of like overcoming that negativity. I was doing a session earlier today, and I had shared that one of my things I had to overcome was like coming over that victim mentality, that I was a victim and that it was everybody else's fault. And then just, and as that was happening, I was tying into all the negativity that brought.
Hmm.
Right. And
Hmm.
so that was a powerful reality, and, tapping into that. And it's like you said, there's an abundance of negativity out there. And I think, too, in the last, few years that we've experienced this like level of fear that has kind of blanketed the planet. Right. And I think it's our way of which, okay, how do we, take this information and transform it into something that's useful, right? And not getting trapped into the negativity, because that's, it's once we get trapped into it, like I said, what we think about, we bring about. And so
Hmm.
it becomes that story, and it's very powerful. And just as much as there's an abundance of negativity, there's just more, if not more, of abundance of positivity, right?
That's
There's
right.
an abundance of, and I always say there's these two realities, and we get to choose which reality we choose to be in, right?
Well, you're
So
absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
yeah, so at a very young age, I mean, I can't even imagine at such an incredible young age facing your reality. And I am always fascinated by this, that, you know, if you're living in this environment, you don't know that there's different reality out there. Like, this is your environment. It's poverty, it's struggle, it's so I'm always fascinated, like, what was the curiosity, or what was I mean, it seems like it was just a knowing for you that you have to shift this. I mean, was there something more to that, or was it more of this knowing, like this divine knowing within?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because that's a lot of what I talk about oftentimes. Is sometimes, actually not sometimes, the majority of times, most people never recognize or realize or embrace their calling, because they don't even know there is
Mm,
a calling. And we enter into this realm thinking that we are supposed to live a life as wandering generalities,
mm-hmm,
and we're not, right? There's a specific calling which leads to an assignment, which manifests your purpose, and then you live your life according to that. So I knew that that wasn't my life. I just had this
mm,
internal sense that there's more out there, even though what my eyes were seeing, and what I was being indoctrinated by, was
mm,
poverty, lack, scarcity, struggle.
mm.
My father had 3 jobs. My mom worked it, and my mom was home. That's all I saw.
Yeah,
But I just knew that this can't be it, because if somebody else could succeed, why can't I?
yeah.
Yeah. So that really was the driving force that allowed me to say, okay, these are my circumstances, but this doesn't have to be my future. This is
Ah, that's
just,
so good. That's so
yeah,
good.
it
You know,
is what it is now.
yeah. And that's so powerful. And I agree with you. I mean, I do believe that we have it within ourselves to change our situations and our circumstances. We do not have to be stuck in, trapped by, that reality, in which we were growing up in. And I had kind of a similar experience. I was extraordinarily shy as a child. And I remember in sixth grade, I said, I have got to figure this out. And again, I was extraordinarily, I cannot emphasize that enough, like how shy I was. And I signed up for the only thing that you couldn't be shy for, which was cheerleading. And I don't know if they felt bad for me or they just needed an extra body on the team, but somehow, some way, I made it on the team. And I was mortified. Okay, like, to even at the process of trying out, I feel like I was like an inch big, and I was on this, in front of the huge audience, and I felt like my mouth, I was like sounding like a mouse. Like, it was awful. Um, but what that forced me to do, willingly or unwillingly, was to get out there and to start to create a voice, and
Hmm.
to start to push beyond what I knew. Right. And I told people, I mean, I tell people all the time that the first 3 months, I was a hot mess. And um, I made myself step into it. I made myself step into it. And now I go back to what you just said, which was so brilliant, is that, listening to that calling, listening to that knowing, that nudge, if you will, that says, I'm just going to do this. I don't know how, I don't know what, I don't know. I'm just going to do it. And I think when we get into that alignment with that purpose and with that, message or downloads or whatever you want to call it, it becomes powerful. And we do feel like we get on this, like, I don't know about for you, but for myself, it felt like I was on this train track. And it's like, once you're on the train track, it's hard to kind of get thrown off the train track. But the first piece is finding the train track, right? Like finding the train track, making sure that's in working order. And then once you're on that train track, it's like, it's go
That's
time,
right.
So that's
It's
wonderful.
funny, you say train track, and I use the analogy using a highway.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things that I have a pet peeve about, when I hear people say, "Oh, stick to your lane, stay to your lane, stick to your lane," and I get why they say that, but here's the drawback in that. It's okay to it's not so much sticking to your lane in so much as it is staying on the highway. Once you find you call it a track, I call it a highway. Once you find that highway that's going to allow you to arrive at whatever destination and dream you have,
Yeah.
it's okay to switch lanes, because every lane is a different expression of who you are.
Yeah.
But just as long as you don't get off the highway and take the off ramp into something you're not supposed to be doing. And I think that's what happens.
Right.
Either most people don't find the highway, or they're on the highway and they get off the off ramp chasing something else that they have no business chasing, because it's not their calling.
I call that ADHOS, attention deficit. Oh, shiny. It's like, oh, shiny, and, there's times in my life where I'm like, my daughter will say to me, mom, seriously, stay, and we're going shopping or something. She's like, Mom, we're here for one thing, not be going, right? Like, so I can relate to that. But you know what? I don't know about you, but like when I became an entrepreneur, and I came from a nonprofit organization background. So like I worked in nonprofits for a long time, and it was just a different mentality. It was a different environment, different culture. And when I stepped into entrepreneurship, like, it was so juicy and fun, and there were so many opportunities. I was just rich with opportunities, and there was this and people were so generous, and still are generous, of like helping, and like, I am just blown away, because I did not experience that same world in the nonprofit world, unfortunately. But I can see how it can be really it's very dangerous, for us to get off topic and, get in, not, getting off the highway and taking those exits when, prematurely, or maybe we forgot, or, now we're making a turnaround. I mean, there's all sorts of things that we can be talking about. Like, so when you're working with folks, or when you're talking with folks, like, what's one of those, a tool or a strategy to help people kind of stay on that path and to endure, because sometimes there's obstacles within that highway, right? One time there was this giant tire that flew off somebody's truck, and it was the craziest thing in the highway, right? We're all going, and it's really jam-packed traffic, and this tire flies up over the light pole, so it's up there.
Wow.
And then it's coming back down, and we're all like going, okay, where's it going to land? Where's it going to land? No one can stop because we're in traffic, and it's like rush hour traffic. And it comes down in the two cars in front of me. It shatters the guy's windshield.
Wow.
Right. So things like that happen, right? On our highway, right? Like, the unexpected things happen. So how do we, what are some ways in which you've kind of helped people stay on that path and not got frustrated, or, with the process?
Sure. It's interesting, because I like that analogy, by the way. It's a very good analogy, or experience that you had. I think a lot of times people find themselves veering off the highway or getting completely stuck when an accident, quote unquote accident, happens, because they're not very clear on what the end looks like. If you're not very clear on what it all looks like when it's said and done, then you will find yourself easily distracted, distressed, discouraged, and depressed.
I love it.
When something else comes along the way. And when I was a personal trainer, I had my own personal training business for a while in my early 20s. One of the things I used to do for people when they would come to me for initial session, I would say, hey, before we talk about how much it's going to cost, weight loss, and all of these things that are important when you're figuring out how you're going to help someone, I would ask them, before we meet, I want you to bring me a picture of what you want to look like in 12 months, not in a month, not in 6 months, not in 3 weeks, a year from now. What does your body look like? And it doesn't have to be a picture of yourself, obviously, but a picture of somebody that looks like the body that you want to have. So that way, along the way, when you get sidetracked, along the way, when you get stuck, along the way, when you get discouraged, you can pull the picture out and says, okay, this is why I'm on that journey. I get it now. So whatever obstacles come along, you're not forgetting why you began the journey in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens for people. They forget why they got on the journey in the first place.
Yeah, I agree with you, because I think so often I talk about having targets and, what are those targets that we're heading towards? And so often, I don't know about for you, but so often when I ask people, what is it that you desire? When I ask that question, I am shocked by the answers, because the answers is like, I don't know. It's silence.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
and so it's hard to go. It's hard to go to your destination, right? It's hard to program in that destination on your GPS if we don't know where we're heading to. And so everything's up for game, right? Everything is, kind of willy-nilly. And so that's why I feel like people get frustrated, because they're not creating the results that they would like to have, because they're changing it up, every 6 months. They're changing it up. Oh, that didn't work out. And so I think you're absolutely right. Is, keeping the end in mind is powerful. And then, as many of the, leaders in our society will share, say, back that up, with the end in mind, how, what are the steps? What are the steps that needs to be happening daily, weekly, monthly, in order to, achieve those desires that you have in mind. So I love it. That's a great reminder.
Yeah, that's good. I like the way you put it as well. At the end of it, it's right. The end in mind, and providing those anchors so that people don't sway.
Yes. So good. So what is, and I think, going back to your story and just the things that you've had to overcome and, staying focused, on this journey, what would you share with listeners? Like what, besides having, the end in mind, what was one other nugget that has helped you, on this journey that you would like to share with the listeners before we wrap up here?
I think what's very important for people to be intentional. You have to be intentional. And let me just say, the reason I say that is because I was having the conversation earlier with a young guy, he's 23 years old, and he just out of SMU here in Dallas, and he just got a job selling technology, HR stuff, right? And so he's frustrated because he's young, he's new, it's a commission-based situation. So I said to him, look, my friend, you have to make sure that whatever you do, if nothing else, that you're intentional about what you do daily, where you're going to be each week. So I gave him my story. When I came from New York here, it'll be 3 years now, next week, that I moved to Dallas. I didn't know anybody in Dallas. I knew 2 people in Dallas, and one of them didn't like me. And so good thing that the other guy did.
Good thing.
Right. So I realized, okay, if I don't know anybody here, then the challenge is, how do I get things going? And I remember once I figured out where the supermarket was, I said, I need to be intentional and get out there every single day and make sure that I maximize my day by going out to meet people. And I was very intentional with doing that. Meetup groups, networking meetings, social events, it didn't matter. I charted a course daily, knowing I'm going to do this. And as a result of that, Teri, that's how I've met great connections. I met Suzanne Johns.
Yeah.
Right.
And
that's the result.
I'm sitting here smiling as you're like being intentional, because I'm right there, like you and I have my daily intentions planner.
Hey, there you go.
Like seriously, like that's because I truly believe that if, when we start to tap in, turn on, and tune into and being in those alignments, like it's not just like, we're going to do this, we're going to think about this once a year or once every 6 months or whatever. This is daily work. This is daily intentional work. And when we start to set those intentions, we allow ourselves to, open up, the energy of the universe, if you will, to help
Hmm.
support us in achieving our desires. And so we don't have to get stuck in the, the fear, the doubt, the worry, and all of the other stuff and figure out the how. We can start to utilize energy to our advantage and help bring, those people, places, situations into our, what's the word? Into our environment. And
Hmm.
so that can be just a lot easier. So it's so powerful. So thank you so much. We're so in alignment. I love
We
it.
are. I knew we would be. I knew when I heard
I
you speak
knew, I know.
at our meeting. I said, okay, we're on the same page here. Me and
I
Terry.
know, I know. We had such a fun time there, So, Jay, thank you so much for your time, your brilliance. Thank you for just listening, right? Like listening to yourself and then continuing to spread this message, because I think this is a powerful message that we all get to, receive. And I think more than ever before, a year ago, I wouldn't have, well, maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, I wouldn't have said this, is that more than ever before, we need people like you. I'm going to call you a light worker today because I do believe
Hmm.
you're here to do some really powerful work. And so we need the light workers of the world to raise up, step in, step out, like to really, help support other people coming and raising the vibrations of the planet. I mean, we are, I don't feel like we have a choice anymore. Like I feel like we get to do this work, so that we can help just, support one another, and more than ever before we need this. So thank you for being this, light in the world.
When you realize, as you're saying that, you found your calling, light work, right? That's your
Yeah.
calling. That's what you
Yeah.
said. You cannot not do what you're doing now. You
Yeah.
cannot even imagine not doing it because that's your calling.
Yeah.
You would be like
It's
a fish out of
powerful.
water. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, just listening to that, listening to what it is that inner knowing that we know, just
Hmm.
trusting it, listening to it, and
Hmm.
taking action with it. So thank you so much, Jay. It's been a delight.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I am so grateful that you joined me for this episode. If you've enjoyed this, then there's just one thing that I would like you to do. Click to subscribe and leave me a rating and review. As my way to thank you, let's connect for a free consultation. Just reach out to me at talkingwithteri, that's TERI.com, to book your time.